I'm Clara Barton. I'm 60 years old, and last night I heard something no mother should ever hear. My eldest son, the one I carried through sickness and storms, said behind a closed door, "I hate her. I wish she'd disappear." My daughter agreed. My heart shattered, but I stayed silent because what they don't know is that everything I did to protect them is the very reason they now despise me. Don't miss a single beat of this story. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash the like, share this with a friend, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your double dose of my 10 p.m. stories awaits you every single day at 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. My name is Clara Barton, and for 6 decades, I believed I had mastered the art of motherhood, sacrifice, discipline, unconditional love. But life has a way of whispering truths you are not ready to hear. Tonight, I'm opening the pages of a story I never planned to tell, a story of secrets, illusions, and a love so desperate it suffocated the people it meant to protect. This isn't a confession, this is a reckoning. When I first heard my son Daniel's voice trembling with anger, I thought I'd imagined it. Daniel, who once clung to my waist as a little boy with his messy dark curls, ocean blue eyes, and nervous habit of rubbing his palms together when he lied, now 35, he's tall, with a sharp jaw and a stiff posture, like every bone is clenched. I heard him pacing the hallway outside my bedroom that night, his boots tapping like accusations. With her, it's always in control. Everything we do, everything we become, she decides. I froze. My breath caught like a knot in my throat. Then my daughter Emily stepped into the conversation. She's 32, soft-featured with long copper hair she twirls around her finger when she's uneasy. Her brown eyes used to shine at me like I was her whole universe. That night, they held shadows. Danny, she never trusted us. She made every choice for us, even the ones we didn't want. My heart throbbed as if something inside me cracked open. Because they weren't entirely wrong. I did try to control everything. I did hold them too close. But they don't know why. They never knew the darkness I fought behind closed doors. They never knew what I saved them from. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the moonlight spilling across the quilt I stitched when they were babies. My hands trembled as I pressed them against my chest, trying to calm the storm inside me. I wanted to open the door, to defend myself. But instead, I listened. Because that night, my children weren't just angry, they were telling the truth they had buried for decades. And that truth was only the beginning. But the real nightmare began when I realized someone else had been feeding their anger all along. I first noticed the shift months earlier, during a Sunday lunch that felt colder than the winter outside. Daniel arrived with shoulders rigid, jaw clenched, and eyes refusing to settle on mine. Emily sat opposite him, picking at her nails, a habit she developed only recently, something she never used to do. Their moods weren't angry, they were rehearsed. Someone had told them something. The third person in the room, sitting silently with a stiff half-smile, was my ex-husband, Thomas Barton. Thomas has always carried himself like a statue carved out of pride. Tall, broad-shouldered, steel gray hair slicked back. His pale eyes are sharp, calculating, always narrowing as if he's evaluating the worth of a person in front of him. He wasn't invited that day. Daniel brought him, without warning. "Thought Dad should be here," Daniel announced, placing a heavy hand on Thomas's shoulder. A chill spread down my spine. Thomas had barely been in their lives growing up. He spent years drifting between jobs, affairs, and excuses. When I finally kicked him out, the kids were too young to understand why. I shielded them from the details, his drinking, his rage, the nights I hid in the bathroom praying he wouldn't break down the door. Now he looked at me with a smirk pulling at the corner of his mouth. the kind that said he was enjoying this. "I've been telling them," he said casually, slicing a piece of roast, "how much you changed after they were born, how controlling you became. They deserve to know." My fork slipped from my hand. Emily looked down, Daniel looked away. And in that moment, I understood. The man who once broke me was now trying to turn my own children against me. But what he told them next was a lie so poisonous it almost destroyed our family. Thomas leaned back in his chair, eyes gleaming, as if revealing his twisted version of the past was entertainment. He tapped his long fingers against the table, a gesture he always used when preparing to manipulate someone. "You were always unstable, Clara," he said slowly, savoring each word. "You controlled every detail. You suffocated them. You kept them from loving me." My breath caught. Emily's fork froze in midair. Daniel stared at his plate, jaw working back and forth. "Dad said you didn't let him see us," Emily whispered. Her voice was soft, unsure, but the hurt in her eyes sliced through me like a blade. I looked directly into Thomas's eyes, those cold, pale eyes that never held remorse. "You know that's not true," he shrugged, raising one eyebrow. "Isn't it? You always had a temper." Temper. The same word he weaponized for years. A memory flashed, his fist slamming into the wall beside my head, dust falling onto my hair, his breath hot and sour with alcohol. "Look what you made me do," he'd hissed. But my children didn't know that version of him. They only knew the one sitting in front of them now, clean-shaven, neatly dressed, speaking softly like a reformed saint. "I didn't keep you from him. He left. He chose to leave." Daniel finally looked up, blue eyes swimming with confusion. "Mom, he said you threatened to take us away if he didn't sign the custody papers." My blood ran cold. "That's a lie," I said firmly. "He signed them because he didn't want responsibility." Thomas's lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. And at that moment, I realized he wasn't just rewriting history, he was rewriting my children's memories. But I had proof that could shatter every lie, if I dared to reveal the secret I'd buried for 30 years. When I was 29 and pregnant with Daniel, I started writing everything down. Every bruise, every slammed door, every night I spent locked in the bathroom with my swollen belly and shaking hands. My handwriting back then was small and panicked, letters leaning forward like they were trying to escape the page. Those journals became my lifeline and my insurance. They are hidden in a brown box under the loose floorboard in my closet. For 3 decades, I never opened it. I told myself it was better that way, better to forget, better to rewrite my own memories into something softer, neater, more survivable. But as I sat there that night, listening to my children question my sanity and my love, I knew the truth. I had let their father rewrite history because I was too ashamed to show them all of it. Not just what he did, what I did. There's a page in that journal stained with tears and a drop of blood. It's the night I pushed Thomas. He had grabbed my arm so hard it left finger-shaped bruises, and I snapped. I shoved him away, screaming, and he tripped, smashing into the coffee table. The edge cut his forehead. Blood everywhere. Daniel was 3. Emily was a baby. They saw everything. He told everyone I was violent, unstable, dangerous. And I never contradicted the story. I let the court believe I was fragile, emotional, barely holding it together, because the judge offered me full custody if Thomas agreed to step away. I chose full custody over the whole truth. Now, as I stood in my dark bedroom, the weight of that brown box pressed against my conscience. If I opened it, I wouldn't just expose him. I'd expose myself, and I didn't know if my children could forgive. The next morning, I woke before the sun, the house heavy with the echoes of last night's accusations. My knees popped as I knelt beside the old oak wardrobe in my bedroom, fingers fumbling at the loose floorboard only I knew how to lift. The wood resisted at first, as if it too feared what was buried beneath it. Then it gave way with a tired sigh. The brown box was there, edges frayed, lid slightly dented. Dust coated the top like a layer of time itself. I traced my name on it with one shaking finger. Clara. For a second, I saw myself as I once was, young, hopeful, thinking I could fix a broken man if I just loved hard enough. I carried the box to the bed and sat down. My hands felt old and foreign as I opened it. The scent of paper and old ink rushed out, a trapped storm. Inside were journals, photographs, a folded court document, and an envelope with Thomas's name scribbled in my desperate handwriting. My heart lurched. The journals told everything: his drinking, his affairs, his threats, the nights I covered bruises with foundation and smiles, the times I lied to my children and said Daddy was busy, when in reality he was passed out on a stranger's couch. But there was more. The court document, custody papers with my neat signature and his scrawl. A section highlighted in yellow, his voluntary relinquishment of visitation rights in exchange for my silence about an incident he feared would ruin him. That incident was the night he almost hit Daniel. My hands curled into fists at the memory. I bargained, manipulated, threatened to expose him if he didn't walk away. I told myself it was protection, but what if to them it looks like betrayal? If you're still here with me, don't let this moment pass. Hit subscribe and like right now so more people can find these stories. And tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place.
I didn't have the luxury of time to decide how this would look to them. An hour later, I heard Daniel's car door slam outside, then Emily's softer footsteps on the porch. They'd come back, either to confront me or to continue believing his version of the past. I wiped my eyes, placed the journals and the court paper on the coffee table, and waited in the living room. Daniel walked in first, filling the doorway like a storm. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, blue eyes tight, lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't sit. He folded his arms over his chest, a shield. Emily followed, copper hair falling over one shoulder, her gaze flickering between my face and the box. "What's that?" Daniel asked. "My proof," I replied. My voice surprised me, steady, low, tired. I motioned to the couch, heart pounding. They sat, cautiously, like they were entering a crime scene. "These are my journals, the custody agreement, records of what your father did and of what I did." I swallowed hard. "If you're going to hate me, I want you to know exactly who you're hating." Emily's fingers twisted a strand of hair. "Did you really keep him from us?" she asked. I picked up the court paper and handed it to her. He chose to give up visitation. In exchange, I agreed not to report something that could have cost him everything. Daniel snatched the document from her hands, scanning it, jaw tightening. "And there's more," I whispered. "He called once, years later. He wanted to see you. I told him no. I thought it was the only way to keep you safe." Daniel's eyes lifted to mine, blue and blazing. "So you did keep him away, Mom. What else didn't you tell us?" Daniel's accusation hung in the air like smoke, thick, stinging, impossible to ignore. Emily's eyes brimmed with confusion, her hands nervously twisting in her lap. Outside, a branch scraped against the window, a soft reminder that time was still moving, even though our family felt frozen in place. "What else didn't you tell us?" Daniel repeated, voice dropping into something more dangerous than anger, disappointment. My throat tightened. "I didn't tell you," I began slowly, "that your father came back when you were teenagers." Both their heads shot up.
He came at night, I continued, drunk, slurring, pounding on the door so hard the frame shook. I watched from the peephole while you slept upstairs. He shouted that he wanted custody, that he had a lawyer, that he'd take you both. Emily's breath hitched. Daniel blinked rapidly. I called the police that night, I said. They warned him, but they didn't arrest him. And the next morning, I filed for a restraining order. Daniel's jaw slackened. We never knew. You didn't need to, I whispered. Then came the part I dreaded most. 5 years later, when you were 18, Daniel, he called again. I swallowed hard. He said he was sober, that he wanted to reconnect, that he missed you. Daniel's voice cracked. And you didn't tell me. I didn't trust him, I said. I thought he'd hurt you again. Silence fell, heavy, crushing. Emily stared at her hands, knuckles pale. Mom, we had the right to decide. Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse, quiet, wounded truth. Daniel stood up abruptly, pacing. So you protected us by lying to us? I closed my eyes. Yes, I said, and I'm so sorry. But nothing could have prepared me for what Daniel said next. Daniel stopped pacing. He turned slowly toward me, his expression unreadable. His chest rose and fell in sharp, controlled breaths, like he was holding back a wildfire. Mom, he said, voice steady but trembling underneath, did you ever think that maybe we needed him? The question hit me like a slap. He stepped closer, blue eyes burning. Maybe we needed a father. Maybe we needed to see his flaws for ourselves. Maybe we needed to choose who he was to us. My voice barely formed. I was scared. I know, but fear doesn't give you the right to rewrite our lives. Rewrite. There it was again, the word I'd been running from for years. Emily gently touched Daniel's arm, but he shook her off, not harshly, but with a grief that softened his anger. He sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I feel like my whole childhood is missing pieces, like holes in a story I never got to read. Tears burned my eyes. I wasn't trying to erase anything. I was trying to protect you from a man who hurt you. Daniel finished. He looked up. But you never let us see who he really was. You turned him into a monster in your silence. And now we don't know what's real. Emily wiped her cheek. Mom, we don't hate you. We're angry because we don't know you. Those words cracked something so deep inside me, I felt the break echo. I'll show you everything. Every journal, every memory, even the ones I'm ashamed of. Daniel exhaled shakily, the fire in him dimming but not extinguished. Then start from the beginning. And so I did. For the next hour, I opened every journal, every page, every wound. But then the front door opened, and the last person I expected walked in. The door creaked open with a slow, deliberate groan that made the three of us freeze. Footsteps followed, heavy, sure, familiar. My breath stopped. Thomas. He stepped into the living room with the confidence of a man who believed he owned the space. His steel gray hair was combed back, jacket crisp, his expression calm. Too calm. His pale eyes scanned the journals spread across the coffee table. Then he smiled. Well, he said, voice smooth as poison, isn't this cozy? Daniel surged to his feet. Emily shrank back slightly, but held her ground. I stayed seated, hands trembling in my lap. What are you doing here? I managed to say. Thomas slipped his hands into his pockets and shrugged. Daniel called me this morning, said you had something to show them. My heart plunged. Daniel's eyes widened. I didn't tell him to come inside, but you told me to come lightly, and here I am. He moved closer, examining the journals with an amused smirk. "So, you finally opened the box, Clara, after all these years." Daniel stepped between us. "Stop talking like you know everything." Thomas chuckled softly. "Oh, Clara, I know more than your mother wants you to." His eyes slid to me, cold and triumphant. "You never told them why I tried to get custody back, did you?" My blood ran cold. "Thomas, don't." He ignored me. "I came back because she threatened me," he said, pointing at me. "She said she'd expose something from the past, something she did." Daniel turned sharply to me. "What is he talking about?" Thomas leaned forward, voice dropping. "She didn't just push me that night," he said. "She retaliated, harder than she admits." A tremor ran through me. "That's not the truth," I whispered. Thomas smirked. "Oh, Clara, tell them everything. Tell them what you did after I hit the wall." And in that moment, I knew I had no choice but to reveal the darkest night of my life. I felt the room closing in, the walls breathing, the air thick enough to choke on. Thomas stood there, arms crossed, lips curled in satisfaction. Daniel and Emily waited, eyes searching mine for truth I'd hidden for decades. I swallowed hard. "Fine," I said. "I'll tell you." I looked straight at Thomas, "But I'll tell you the right way." I took a breath that felt like a leap off a cliff. "That night," I said, quietly, "when he slammed his fist into the wall, he didn't stop there." Emily flinched. Daniel stiffened. He grabbed my wrist, twisted it, hard. I screamed, and when I fell, I hit the edge of the coffee table, my ribs bruised instantly. Daniel's hands curled into fists. Thomas rolled his eyes. "Oh, please." "Let me finish," I snapped. They all fell silent. I got up. I was terrified. For me. For you. My voice cracked. "So yes, I retaliated. I grabbed the nearest thing, a glass candle holder, and I threw it. It cut his forehead. He stumbled, and for a moment I thought I'd killed him." Emily gasped softly. "I didn't call the police, because I knew they'd see me as the hysterical wife, the violent one, and I knew the court would take you away." Thomas shrugged one shoulder. "You could have told them you were scared." "I did," I said. "For years. Nobody listened." I turned to my children. "I made mistakes. I lied. I hid things. I controlled things. But every choice, every terrible, flawed, desperate choice came from wanting you safe." Daniel's eyes softened first. Emily reached for my hand. Thomas scoffed. Pathetic. But Daniel stepped forward, voice like steel. "Dad, get out." Thomas froze. For the first time, he looked small, powerless. He left without another word. Emily cried into my shoulder. Daniel held us both. And for the first time in decades, our family began to heal. Some stories don't end with answers. They end with wounds finally exposed to the light, healing in slow breaths and trembling hands. Maybe forgiveness isn't sudden, it's a journey. If you're still here with me, let the next story find you. At 10 p.m., another truth will unfold. If this story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Tap subscribe, hit like, share it with someone who would feel it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. My 10 p.m. stories arrives every day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., so you're always caught up.